The Dark Ages, the truth behind the lost years of Europe. It was the year 476 AD. The Eternal City, Rome, stood on the brink of ruin. The once mighty empire, which had ruled the known world for centuries, now crumbled under the weight of corruption, invasion, and betrayal. The last emperor, a boy named Romulus Augustulus, was overthrown by a barbarian warlord, Odoacer. Rome had fallen, and with it, an age of knowledge, art, and civilization seemed to vanish into darkness. Cut to the burning ruins of Rome, with soldiers looting and citizens fleeing in terror. But was this truly the beginning of a dark age? The myth of the Dark Ages. For centuries, historians labeled the period following the fall of Rome as the Dark Ages, a time of ignorance, superstition, and decline. But is this really the truth? Or was this era far more complex than we have been led to believe? Let's begin by unraveling the myth, the slow death of Rome. Many believe Rome fell overnight, but in reality, its decline was gradual. The empire had been rotting from within for decades. Weak leadership, civil wars, economic collapse, and plagues had weakened its foundations. By the 3rd century AD, Rome was already struggling. Barbarian invasions, Visigoths, Vandals, and Huns constantly attacked its borders. Political corruption. More than 26 emperors were assassinated in just 50 years. Economic failure. Heavy taxation and inflation destroyed trade and wealth. The final blow came in 476 AD when the Western Roman Empire collapsed under its own weight, leaving Europe in a state of chaos. Roads fell into disrepair, cities were abandoned, and literacy rates plummeted. The rise of the barbarians. After Rome's fall, various barbarian kingdoms rose to power. Many of these so-called barbarians were not as savage as Roman historians painted them. In fact, they adopted many Roman traditions. Some of the most powerful groups included the Franks, led by King Clovis. They would go on to establish one of Europe's most influential kingdoms. The Visigoths, the very people who sacked Rome, later settled in Spain and created their own kingdom. The Ostrogoths, they ruled Italy and tried to preserve Roman culture. However, without a strong central government like Rome, lawlessness spread, and Europe became fragmented into small, warring kingdoms. A world without Rome. Life in the early Dark Ages. Imagine living in a time where there were no schools, no libraries, and no large cities. Roads were unsafe, making travel and trade dangerous. Knowledge was passed only by word of mouth as books became rare. For the average person, life was brutal. Disease, famine, and war became a part of daily existence. But even in this so-called darkness, small sparks of knowledge and civilization continued to flicker. The role of the Catholic Church. While Europe seemed to be descending into chaos, one institution held the remnants of Roman knowledge and culture, the Catholic Church. Monasteries became the last strongholds of learning, where monks copied ancient texts by hand. Christianity spread across Europe, bringing new laws and uniting different tribes under a common faith. Unlike the West, where knowledge was disappearing, the Byzantines preserved and expanded upon the works of ancient philosophers, mathematicians, and scientists. Greek and Roman texts were copied and stored in vast libraries. Byzantine scholars kept alive the ideas of Plato, Aristotle, and Ptolemy. Their knowledge later influenced the Islamic Golden Age and the European Renaissance. Show monks and scribes in dimly lit rooms copying ancient manuscripts. The role of the Orthodox Church, a different kind of Christianity. While Western Europe was under the control of the Catholic Church, the Byzantines followed Eastern Orthodox Christianity. The Patriarch of Constantinople held religious authority, challenging the power of the Pope. The church became a center of art and culture, influencing architecture, mosaics, and religious traditions. Byzantine missionaries like Cyril and Methodius spread Christianity to the Slavic peoples, shaping future nations like Russia and Bulgaria. This religious divide between East and West would eventually lead to one of the greatest schisms in history. Islam rises, a new power challenges the Byzantine world. By the 7th century, a powerful new force emerged from the Arabian Peninsula, Islam. The followers of the Prophet Muhammad rapidly expanded, conquering vast lands. The Byzantines lost Egypt, Syria, and North Africa to Muslim armies. The siege of Constantinople, 717 AD, the Arabs came close to capturing the city, but the Byzantines used a deadly secret weapon, Greek fire. Show animations of Greek fire, flames that burned even on water, terrifying enemy ships. The Byzantines, a civilization at the crossroads. The Byzantine Empire stood between the East and the West, preserving ancient knowledge, influencing medieval Europe, and shaping the future of Christianity. But as the Byzantines held their ground, Western Europe was changing. A new empire was rising, a force that would reshape the medieval world. Europe lay in ruins. The Western Roman Empire had crumbled, its mighty cities reduced to decaying shadows of their former selves. Knowledge, once the pride of civilization, flickered like a dying candle. But in the midst of the darkness, a new power was rising. A warrior king, a barbarian turned ruler, would take up the mantle of Rome and change the course of history. His name was Charlemagne. Show a mighty warrior in armor standing atop a hill, looking over his vast empire. The rise of Charlemagne. From warrior to Emperor Charlemagne, or Charles the Great, was the king of the Franks. Born in 747 AD, he was the son of Pepin the Short and the grandson of Charles Martel, the legendary warrior who had stopped the Muslim advance into Europe at the Battle of Tours in 732 AD. When Charlemagne inherited the throne in 768 AD, Europe was fractured. Small, warring kingdoms fought for survival. Bandits roamed freely, and the common people had lost all hope of a unified empire. But Charlemagne had a vision to unite the lands under his rule and restore the greatness of the Roman Empire. Show a map of Europe before Charlemagne, divided into various barbarian kingdoms. The Carolingian Wars, the birth of an empire. To achieve his dream, Charlemagne waged relentless military campaigns for over 30 years. He conquered the Lombards in Italy, securing an alliance with the Pope. He launched a brutal war against the Saxons, forcing them to convert to Christianity. He defeated the Avars and Muslim forces in Spain, expanding his empire to its greatest extent. By 800 AD, Charlemagne controlled a vast territory covering modern-day France, Germany, Belgium, the Netherlands, Switzerland, Austria, and parts of Italy and Spain. On Christmas Day, 800 AD, something extraordinary happened. Inside the grand halls of St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, Charlemagne knelt before Pope Leo III. The Pope placed a crown upon his head and declared him Emperor of the Romans. Showed dramatic footage of Charlemagne being crowned, while the Pope raises his hands in blessing. For the first time since the fall of Rome, Europe had a new empire, the Holy Roman Empire. But Charlemagne's greatest achievement was not his conquest. It was the rebirth of learning that he sparked across his empire. The Carolingian Renaissance, a return to knowledge. Charlemagne understood that a strong empire needed more than just military strength. It needed education, art, and culture. He gathered the finest scholars from across Europe to restore lost knowledge and create a new intellectual movement, the Palace School, the heart of learning. At his capital in Aachen, modern-day Germany, Charlemagne established the Palace School, inviting the greatest minds of the time. He brought Alcuin of York, an English scholar, to teach Latin, theology, and philosophy. He promoted the study of ancient Roman and Greek texts, ensuring they were copied and preserved. He developed the Carolingian Minus, a new form of writing that made books more readable and uniform. Show monks copying books in candlelit monasteries, carefully preserving ancient knowledge. Before Charlemagne, very few people in Europe could read or write. Under his rule, schools were established in monasteries and churches. Nobles and even Charlemagne himself took lessons to improve literacy. The Bible and classical works were rewritten and spread across Europe. Show a split-screen comparison. On the left, an illiterate barbarian warrior. On the right, scholars in Charlemagne's court studying ancient texts. The transformation is clear. The role of Christianity in the Carolingian Renaissance. Charlemagne was deeply religious, and he saw Christianity as a unifying force for his empire. He forced conquered peoples to convert to Christianity, sometimes using extreme methods. He strengthened the power of the church, making it the most dominant institution in medieval Europe. He helped establish church laws, monastic reforms, and religious schools to train future leaders. But not everyone saw Charlemagne's rule as benevolent. The Saxons, for example, resisted for decades, and thousands were executed for refusing to convert. His reign was a mix of enlightenment and brutality, a ruler caught between the old world and the new. Show scenes of Saxon warriors rebelling against Charlemagne's forced conversions, only to be defeated in battle. Their leader, Wedekind, ultimately surrers and converts. The division of an empire, the end of a dream. Despite Charlemagne's achievements, his empire did not last long after his death. When he died in 814 AD, his empire was divided among his three grandsons. Internal conflicts and Viking invasions weakened the empire. By the late 9th century, the Carolingian Empire had fractured into separate kingdoms. Show Viking ships raiding coastal towns, signaling the beginning of a new era of chaos. The dream of a unified Europe had ended. The legacy of the Carolingian Renaissance. Though his empire did not survive, Charlemagne's impact on history was immense. He revived education and preserved knowledge, which would later fuel the Renaissance. His support for Christianity helped shape medieval Europe's religious structure. His legal and administrative reforms laid the foundation for modern European governance. Even today, Charlemagne is remembered as the father of Europe. Without him, the knowledge of Rome and Greece might have been lost forever. Show a final montage. The burning of Rome, the rise of Constantinople, and the rebirth of learning under Charlemagne. The cycle of history continues. The Dark Ages were never truly dark. They were a time of struggle, transformation, and resilience. The fall of Rome led to chaos, but also new beginnings. The Byzantine Empire preserved knowledge while the West rebuilt itself. Charlemagne revived education and created a new European identity. This was not the end of civilization. It was the beginning of something new. Dramatic pause. Music builds. The Dark Ages were never the end. They were the spark that led to the rebirth of the West.